Welcome back to the Banking on Data podcast, powered by Lumio Solutions, where we invite experts from across the community banking and credit union industry to share best practices for enabling risk-informed business intelligence. Hello, welcome back to the Banking on Data podcast. I am excited to have a new face on the program with us here today, a fellow podcasting wizard himself, Josh Barclay. Josh is the host of the Banking on Experience podcast and the founder of that series, as well as director of growth at BusinessNext. Josh, it's great to have you with us here today.
Ed, thanks for having me. A fellow Connecticut guy. I'm excited to be here. I'm in Utah. I wish I was in Connecticut, but discussion for another time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Some people might say they would be willing. We want to be in Utah. So there we go. Josh, before we get into the topic of the day and really talking about this whole concept of equipping sales with actionable data, systems of action, right? Really empowering sales teams to be successful. Let's set the stage a little bit as to kind of why you're someone people should listen to. So talk to us a little bit about your background, and in particular, right? Why did you launch your podcast? And then also a little bit about BusinessNext and your experience there.
Yeah, great question. Let's kick things off with that. So I started my career in film. So I produced my claim to fame, I peaked very early, unfortunately. But when I was in film school, I attended a school called the School of Visual Arts. It's in Manhattan. And while there, me and my roommates, we raised $90,000 to make a movie. So in 12 days, we made a movie. We sold it to Lifetime. Now, Lifetime, yes, that Lifetime, the terrible
Nice.
movies for women channel. So they have two channels. They have the Lifetime channel, but they also have a 24-hour movie network. And so we sold that to the movie network. And long story short, we got a few more projects, didn't work out so well. So I talked to my mom and said, look, my skill set feels really good for tech, right? So started working for a tech company out of Utah, BusinessNext, who I'm with now. And I looked at the media landscape, particularly in banking, finance, and I did not feel very good about a lot of the media outlets that are out there. A lot of them are gratuitously promotional. They're almost like trade. They're glorified trade magazines, in my opinion. No disrespect. I'm not going to name names, obviously. That would be disrespectful. So I wanted to start something where I could bring people on to have like honest conversations that challenge people. Because Ed, in this industry, it's the status quo has won for a long time. Be safe.
Right.
Don't say anything edgy. Don't challenge anybody. And I've taken the opposite approach where I wanted to create a podcast where I challenge my guests to try to get to solutions or answers. And that's why I started this podcast, to just let's have honest conversations and not speak like politicians,
I do like your characterization there, of that dynamic is inherent in the industry in which we operate, right? It is, there's a lot of inertia with the status quo, right? It's a lot easier to leave your deposit accounts at the bank you've been at for years and years. Core systems have massive switching costs. Brands take long time, can take a long time to create loyalty. So a lot of those dynamics of accepting, tolerating, just what happened yesterday is going to happen tomorrow. But yet, right, we have this new generation of fintechs, of data, of technology, of AI, if you will, right, that are ready to upset the apple cart, right, to challenge that status quo. And so I think part of that is being willing to have that honest conversation and be comfortable being uncomfortable, if you will, in that setting.
Yeah, you said it. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think people want to act like it's business as usual, and that is what I'm trying to shake people out of. How can it be business as usual when we just came out of a black plague moment like the pandemic, right? Which is once in a lifetime massive moment, and then that's also paired with basically the new equivalent of the printing press, which is AI. So we
Right.
come out of the black plague and then there's a new revolutionary technology on top of it. Then you have interest rates going crazy because the dollar is starting to wane in global so it's like a perfect storm. If you remember that bad movie based on a true story with George Clooney of The Perfect Storm, where those guys went out fishing and there were multiple hurricanes that sort of like merged together to create this storm that no one had ever seen before. And that's the moment I feel like we're in, but everybody wants to act like it's not happening or it's business as usual. And I'm like, really? Am I crazy?
Well, no, right? You're the one that is seeing the perfect storm as opportunity, and I think that is, you know, that's that's the hardest part of this is getting people to accept and adopt and embrace and listen to change and be willing to say, yes, all these crazy things happening all at once. Um, it could sink our ship, or we could just weather the storm, or we could use this as an opportunity to change the way we think about our customers, our technology, our opportunities in the marketplace, the way which we do business. And so maybe this is a way for to kind of pivot over and talk a bit about Business Next and kind of what the Business Next solution set is all about, just as a quick primer. But then let's get into some of the arena there that you spend a lot of your time in, really around this kind of sales marketing space. And I want to talk a bit about kind of the blurring of those lines and that dynamic. But maybe just before we get into that, what's Business Next? What does Business Next do? So we understand kind of where you're coming from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Business Next is a CRM. Not a big fan of CRM because I feel like that market category has become kind of muddied with the sales forces, and so I feel like there's a lot of misconception around that category. So I'll start with, we do operate under the CRM product category, but what we really do is we unify data to create actionable insights. What do I really mean by that? So you've got the core, you've got your LOS, you've got your online banking, you have your call center software, all of that stuff, as you know, Ed, probably better than just about anybody out there. It doesn't talk to each other. So if you want actionable insights, yeah, you could get them, but you're going to need 12 people wrangling spreadsheets together. That could take weeks, if not months. And by the time you get an insight from your data, it's already too late, right? If a customer is in market for something right now, they're looking for a product right now. They don't have time for you to be wrangling spreadsheets to figure out that they need an auto loan right now. So effectively bringing all that data together to be able to get the insight of, okay, Ed's probably in market for an auto loan. Okay, Ed's kid is about to turn 18. Maybe there's some opportunity there with an automobile or college, or just understanding the opportunities that are there for your customers in near real time. We don't like to say real time. What is real time? But near real time or the right time. So that's what we're doing. It's very ambitious, but I think if you don't make that move to unify your data, you got done. We were talking about the perfect storm, and for a long time, maybe you could operate with those siloed data sets, but I think it's pretty obvious that you can't operate that way anymore. Not with the market dynamics, right?
Not if you want to capture the opportunity, right? And maybe at best you are able to maintain the status quo. Really hard to grow, really hard to innovate, really hard to attract new customers. And so if you can put yourself in a position though where someone comes up to your teller window, and you can have a thoughtful conversation with them. We'll come back to that example. I won't jump too far ahead. Let's go back to setting to this question of sales and marketing, because right, those are those are two constituencies that need to collaborate. They need to be complementary. But it's not always clear kind of where is the line, right? What is marketing versus what is sales, and kind of what's driving the changing interaction between the two. So let's start there.
Yeah, start at a high level, probably with just some theory around this, or at least my philosophy around this. I feel like I benefited from not being starting my career as a professional marketer. So coming in from film, I got to come in with a new lens to be able to come into the corporate world late, right? I came into tech at 35 years old, right? So I didn't
Right.
come up in this industry. And as soon as I came in and I saw the separation between, okay, the sales team's over here, they do this, marketing's over here doing this. And I immediately looked at that and I'm like, this doesn't really make any sense to me why these two departments that are effectively trying to drive the same results are not unified in their strategy. They're not unified in their communication, right? Like there are
Right.
sales guys I didn't even know some of these guys worked at the company. And I'm like, what is going on? I don't even know who this guy is. So I immediately just started to build a different philosophy around the idea of we're not two different departments. We're going to have our Monday morning meetings together as one unit. I'm going to drive intelligence to the sales team. So one of the things that I feel like marketing is responsible for, I think a lot of organizations look at marketing as just get me leads, get us leads. Is that part of the equation? Sure is. But the other thing you can do is give people intelligence. Who is behaving in a certain way that suggests that there's buying intent? Can I get those signals to my sales team in a timely manner where they can take action on the intelligence that marketing is creating? Give you an example. If you're running a targeted LinkedIn ads campaign, there's so much data that you can glean from that. It can tell you Mountain America Credit Union has clicked on your ads 50 times. Okay, well, that's something. Does the sales team know that? Do my sales reps know that Mountain America is starting to bite on these ads? Can I deploy those insights quickly to everybody in the organization so they understand? To the fishing analogy, people, I don't do this, but I have an uncle in Southern Illinois who has a little fish detector, so when he goes out,
Right.
he knows which patches of the lake have the fish or the most fish. And I think as a marketing organization, that is part of your job to give the sales team an idea of where are the fish are, who is actually interested in buying right now. Because one of the things I hear is outbound doesn't work, cold calling doesn't work, cold email doesn't work. And I would say, yeah, if you're doing it with no data to inform who to do that to or who to take action upon, it doesn't work. But if I know that Mountain America has clicked 150 ads in the last week, we probably should go outbound to Mountain America, So that's kind of my long spiel. And I don't want to, because I could rant about this for too long, Ed, because it's one of the things that frustrates me about sort of the corporate structure of marketing and sales.
But you mentioned a few really simple ways that um, community financial institutions could think differently there, right? As something as simple as you bring the sales and the marketing folks together for that Monday morning meeting. And I know that you go into your Monday morning meetings with data in hand and talk about specific, in your example there, right? The Mountain America, right? Example, you would come into that meeting and say, they have clicked on this 50 times. Therefore, you should go and do something about that. You should initiate those outbound calls. So I think that doesn't require a change in org structure. That doesn't require even those two teams getting, one team getting access to another team's tools. That's as simple as saying, let's just get in a room. Let's be old school. Let's physically be together, right? Whether it's virtually or physically, and share some information. And that's kind of within most people's control to be able to enact that type of a change.
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't require any real org change. I think for anybody listening, thinking they have to shuffle, because I've noticed that when you have a new idea, everybody's kind of like, oh man, like how much friction is it going to take to implement this new idea? And to your point, Ed, none. Literally, do you have a Monday
None.
morning meeting with a sales team? Are they alone and not with the marketing team? Add the marketing team, and we're already halfway there.
Right, right. So then let's get into then that second step of all right, you're now there, and this whole idea of equipping folks with data to act in the moment. Um, I we have talked about, and I teased it earlier with that teller example. Um, right? It doesn't have to be real-time information, to your point, right? It needs to be timely, but really, most importantly, it needs to be relevant. It needs to be something where you are giving value, you are having a conversation about something that actually matters to the person on the other side of the window in that example. So you talk a little bit about that whole concept of equipping frontline staff with the ability to act on data in the moment, if you will.
Yeah, this is the thing I'm probably the most passionate about. When I think about growth opportunities for financial institutions right now, when I talk to folks, they're obsessed with acquisition. Oh, we want new members. You know, if they're a community bank, oh, we want new customers. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Growth can come in two forms. There's new members, new customers, or we're expanding the product set of our existing members or our existing customers. And that, the latter, is the big opportunity because that is the easiest to implement right away. And what I mean by that, you mentioned the teller experience, right? Now, if I'm walking into my branch or I'm calling into the contact center, you have my captive attention. You have it. It's right there. You want to upsell, you want to cross sell, you have my attention. If you want to automate emails, I'll be frank with you. I'm not opening your email. I'm probably going to ignore your ad. Now, if it's relevant over time, it'll probably creep into my mind and my mental availability for when I'm ready to make a purchasing decision. But right now, when I walk into the branch, if you can tell me something relevant like, Josh, you have your money right now parked in something that's not producing much of a yield. It's been sitting there. You don't touch it. How about we move it into something that's doing 4.5%, 5% yield and make money off of that? Look, that's not a huge money maker necessarily for the institution itself, but that creates more trust to where now when you want to offer me more products, I'm open to it because you're helping me. We call it next best action. Next best action doesn't necessarily mean it's a hugely profitable move for the financial institution. Like you moving my money over to a CD is probably not going to be a life-changing revenue grab for your institution. But what it does is it makes me feel comfortable with you that you understand me, you understand my situation, you're offering me advice. So the next time you do hard sell me a product, I'm going to remember that time that you helped me out and provided some guidance. So that's what I'm trying to offer to credit unions and community banks is I'll give you an example. Not to go on too much of a rant, it's completely relevant to what we're talking about. Got an indirect auto loan, okay, through a credit
Yep.
union.
Yes.
They never once reached out to offer me any secondary products. They never reached out to expand the relationship. The first communication I got from that credit union was the bill for my car payment. And that's what I mean. I would have been so open to more
Right.
products and services with that credit union if they had just reached out. So, what's the revenue opportunity that you're missing then when a lot of your membership or customer base is willing to do more business with you, but you don't have the relevant information to put in front of them to make it happen?
Right. And and the irony is that you actually have all that information inside your four walls, right? You don't even need to go out and find it elsewhere, right? Similar to your comment about, right, going and finding those new members, those new customers, those new names out there. These are people that you know all this information about them. Now, you might have information sitting in your core, in your right in your customer database, in your transaction record, in your demographic, right, drawer, whatever it is. But you still have all of it, so it really is within your control if you make that decision as a financial institution to prioritize this concept of unification of data. You can do that. Now, it's an investment. It's a prioritization exercise, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it is certainly is within your purview to enact that strategy.
Totally, Ed. It totally it. If you really think about the cost, I always tell people, like, there's the benefit and there's the cost of inaction. I read something, an article from CU Insight, that now these numbers vary because the data on this is really hard to get a concrete answer on, but it was average acquisition costs for a financial institution. And it was to get a net new member is probably going to cost you about $489. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the whether that's too large of a number for acquisition is really dependent upon how many products and services, like what's the lifetime value of the member or the customer. But if you don't have unified data to be able to expand that relationship, your acquisition costs are going to eat you alive. And I'm already seeing it. I'm already talking to credit unions and some community banks that are complaining ad nauseum about the acquisition costs. But then when you look into their data and it's like, yeah, but the average member or customer only has 2 products per, like, you're literally not going to be able to make the relationship profitable unless you have that share of wallet, you know?
Right.
And to do
Right.
that, the tools that you're going to need are that relevant information and that unified data. So to me, unified data is kind of like it's a prerequisite
Right.
for the expansion of the relationship.
There's so much data out there. How would you think about prioritizing, like, which data do you go after? What's truly actionable, right? Right, because you can't do everything all at once. A little bit like our earlier conversation, right? You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it's controversial. It's a controversial question, right? Because if you're a data lake or a data warehouse, they're going to tell you that it's that. I happen to be part of a CRM company, so I'm going to tell you it's CRM. But I think it all depends on the institution, to give that safe answer. I told you I hate safe answers, but the safe answer is to look at your own situation and try to evaluate the opportunities that exist that you can actually look at right now.
That's fair. I think it's also the perhaps the theme that sits underneath that is that the answer can be different depending upon who you are. So the reason that I think that answer, it does have a bit more weight to it is it depends upon what your objectives are and what your current situation looks like. So there's probably not a one size fits all, but what there is that there should be an acknowledgement that it's not an all or nothing. And even if you get 2 bits of data stitched together, you can have a more valuable conversation with that person that comes up to the teller window. Maybe there are still 3 or 4 other things that you are missing that you're not talking about, but you do have something else that you're talking about. So it's a step. It gets you out of the starting gate.
Yeah. I think there's a guy that I really respect. His name is Mitch Rutledge, and he's the co-founder, CEO of a company called Vertus AI. And his whole spiel is you don't need to boil the ocean. People get so fixated on what to do first and they end up doing nothing. And then years go by and nothing has still been done. And there's an analysis paralysis. To your point, Ed, figure out what the low hanging fruit is and go from there. If you're trying to
Right.
expand, share of wallet, you probably don't need a data warehouse. You probably could jump into a CRM. If you're trying
Right.
to evaluate certain risks that are arising, then obviously your platform would be a massive move. But you have
Right.
to do something, and you don't need to boil the ocean. I see people feeling like they have to boil the ocean. Then they get really invested in some huge project like a data warehouse. No knock on data warehouses. I'm not a huge fan. Just putting that out. I'm slightly kidding. They're great, but when you jump to something that, it's like if you and me have never built a house, and I'm like, you know what, Ed? I think it's time to build a skyscraper. And you're like, dude, we've never
Right.
even built a
A
house.
shed, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
we're,
yes,
we're
yeah.
not even on the shed level yet, and you want to build. And I see a lot of institutions building the skyscraper, and they're disenchanted because the implementation fails. And it's very common. I can't tell you how many people I talk to. Yeah, we got a data warehouse project. I'm not sure what it does. I don't know what the value is. Yeah, I don't know. Mm, Yeah.
Yes, and right, and I was with someone recently, and they used the phrase, right, once bitten, twice shy. As soon as you try and right build a skyscraper and it doesn't work, you you're probably not going to get another opportunity to go and build something again, at least not for a little while. Maybe
Yeah.
you need to turn over the players who are going to approve it and everything else. So you're better off starting with the shed, right, and right, stitching together a couple of pieces of data, so that you can have a thoughtful, timely conversation. Um, get that, get that foundational step in place, build the trust, right, as you said before. I love that next best action, terminology, right? It is right. It doesn't. It's not the be all end all. It's not the end state, but it's the next thing you can do to strengthen that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to be everything a product push, right? Like
Absolutely.
if I could save you some money and it's not going to be super profitable to my institution, you're going to remember that when you called in or came to the branch that I did that for you. And that matters. I'll give you an example of how I'm
Yes.
seeing it matter. I am a member of Mountain America Credit Union. I opened a new business account there, and the process wasn't great. The digital process, the online process was not great. Just going to be
Hmm.
completely honest. But
Yeah.
when I called people, the experience was incredible. Like, great service. They're making great suggestions. They kind of know me a little bit. So there's a few little things that they had suggested that they were accurate about. And so in my mind, that relationship, even though there are some things about Mountain America that I don't like, I wish their digital experience were better. But because I feel like they know me, I'm not going to take my banking relationship elsewhere. All they have to do
Look,
is show me that they understood me a little bit as a human.
right, and we talk a lot about the fact that um, the way that community financial institutions can survive and thrive in the world which we live in today is to lean into that unique aspect which they have, which is those local relationships with the people who, whether it's come into the branch, do it digitally, but it's that relationship. And so if they can continue to foster that relationship and then take advantage of the data that is related to that, um, and ideally you use some sort of off-the-shelf tools, or if you're going to do it yourself, you do it in a really basic way, kind of stitch stuff together, but you don't make a massive investment in decision. You don't need to, but if you can do something to strengthen and maintain that relationship and use data to do so, guess what? You now have a fighting chance to compete against that regional, national, global, multinational institution, because they don't know Josh Barclay, right? They don't know, right, why you opened that business account and what were the other things that were important to you in that conversation. And so I do think that it's so important for smaller community financial institutions, to embrace this because right you want to be known. You want someone to know about your business. You want someone to give you an idea of how they can be helpful. That's valuable to you, and that is something that community financial institutions are uniquely positioned to deliver.
And I think you said it, but I also think it's the only real differentiator. Like if you want
Yes.
to compete on tech now, like you read an article and it's like, Jamie Dimon, Chase, they've invested 1.3 gazillion dollars in AI. And it's like, dude, you are not gonna compete with that. That's like you and me, Ed, going to the basketball court and like Jordan brought like the dream, like the last year's all-star team.
Yeah.
We're not going to
Right.
compete on skill. We're not going to compete on speed. And that example is a bad one because I don't know how we're going to compete at all. But in the situation of like community banks and financial institutions of that nature, it is literally the last domain that you are going to be able to differentiate yourself from these massive institutions. It's the only one.
Well, and I do I'll go back to your you were going to say the dream team for the old folks that are they're listening to us, but you then said last year's all-star team for the younger audience. But either way, you and I don't stand a chance in that situation, right? We don't have any cards in our hand and any way to even, be in that same on that same floor with them. But these community financial institutions do. They have those local relationships, they have the understanding of them. And so if they can really get their hands on this data, unify that data, um, I would argue that not only is it a differentiator, it's something that those larger financial institutions, they actually can't compete there.
No.
Like there's no amount of money that those, too big to fail institutions put towards it is going to allow them to get to know you in the way that that local institution does.
No, and you're absolutely right. And I did bank with a larger institution, and it was a nightmare. I call in and I'm put on hold, and they're passing me around 7, 8 times. Nobody knows me. Nobody cares. There's no tie to where I live at all.
Right.
They don't know the restaurants. They don't know the communities. And I know some people will argue, well, I don't care if they do or not. Well, that's fine, but there's a large swath of the population that do care. And if you look at the major banks, they're, you read the Wall Street Journal and it's like Chase is getting into higher end clientele. If you look at the big institutions, they're focusing more on richer, more affluent folks, and the working class is sort of being ignored, in my opinion, based on I'm heavy reading on pretty much every publication daily, right? So I have a decent pulse of this where the big institutions are focusing on the affluent people who may be living in a skyrise in Manhattan versus the working class. So when I look at that differentiator, I think you're 100% right. Not only is it the only differentiator, but I don't think the big institutions can compete. And quite frankly, I don't know if they want to. They probably do, but it doesn't look like they're putting in the time and effort to actually do that.
It's hard for them to rationalize the economics, right? Given their size, right? There's a scale issue there. So look, I think that you've hopefully given our audience some really interesting um, principles and concepts, right, to lean into here. The one area we didn't get into today, and I'm gonna table it maybe to and ask you if you'll come back and talk to us about tools and tooling and sales enablement and what that looks like, in particular in a world where, right, there is more data. People are starting to get it unified. There's more intelligence and analysis and these predictive elements. So I'd love to come back to that conversation, but I think you've given folks some really great concepts here to lean into, whether it is unification of data, right, to create actionable insights, right? Um,
And one
Figuring
one
out.
thing I think that would be really helpful too, to just one thing that I haven't said that I'd love to say, which just really quickly, um, I did a keynote in Boston at Future Branches back this summer, and a lot of people are talking about AI. So I think AI is muddling the conversation a little bit in terms of people are not making decisions because they think that there's a UFO out there being built and they don't want to buy a 747 because, well, if I buy the 747, then I might miss out on this new UFO technology. But the
Right.
truth is, that is not a reason to prolong your decision on data unification, because you have to unify your data to get AI operating effectively. So data unification is a prerequisite for AI deployment. And I think people are missing that point. They don't want to make decisions about technology because the Area 51 is about to unveil this new UFO, and I don't want to miss out if I buy the 747. But I'm telling you that data unification, just because of AI does not supersede data unification. In fact, if you do not have your data unified, what is the AI model going to pull from? It's surfacing from a data set. So I didn't mean to steamroll you there, but I just wanted to say that because I'm hearing so many people getting confused or not wanting to make a decision because they think that if I do this, I'm going to miss out on AI, and you're not. You still have to unify your data. So that's, sorry about that.
It's a great.
I had to make that
I'm
point.
I'm glad you put that in there, right? Because that's probably all of it in a nutshell, right? We're talking about you know data unification and creating actionable insights and empowering folks at the at the point of attack there, right? And thinking about right the importance of your current clients and all you can do to help them and the next best action and the fact that right you have all this opportunity, but then people paralyzed. They stop and they say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on. There's this other shiny object over here." And I think that right, your point there is really on the mark. That data unification is a prerequisite for AI, right? And before that, right, you noted that you have to do something. So get started, right? Get that data unification action in motion, regardless of what you use, how you use, where you do it, because that is fundamental to be able to create insights that drive growth, and put you in a position to take advantage of future technology down the line. So I think that your synopsis there that data unification is the prerequisite, frankly, to all of this is really the capstone comment.
Totally. Ed, thank you for
Josh,
having me
thank
on. I
you.
appreciate it. I
Yeah, this has been
always
great.
love talking to another guy. I don't know if you're from Connecticut, but I'm just going to put it out there that you are. You're going to rep it.
Yes,
I
I
might be in
am.
town for a Yukon Huskies game. We'll have to catch up.
Nice. Looking forward to having you. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Ed.